Okay, super. Grenville, would you like to start by introducing yourself, and then we can go around and hear who everyone is?
Yeah, well, I'm Grenville Johnson. I'm giving the presentation tonight, and thank you so much for joining me. I hope it becomes a really good learning exercise. So welcome to you all, and thank you for joining me.
Great, thank you, Grenville. Alison and Steve, do you guys want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Alison Harper, so Steve Harper. He can introduce himself though, probably. We live in Bath Easton on the edge of Bath. We're part of a group who kind of plant fruit trees, and we've got a small forest garden, and do lots of things to kind of encourage people to think more sustainably and things.
Great.
So
yeah, and I'm with Grow Bath Eastern too. Yeah, so that's probably enough.
Awesome. Emma?
I'm Emma Young. I work at a permaculture garden in Thornbury. It's within the grounds of a care home. I'm also involved with Sustainable Thornbury and hopefully soon Grow Wilder, which is based in Frenchay. So yeah.
Great. Irene, do you want to introduce yourself?
So yeah, I'm Irene, and I work with Emma in the Wildlife Champions project. So yeah, I've been floating around the project for a bit, but now I'm like working more closely, but I'm in the background. So Emma is the one that you'll see and hear from, but I'm part of the team. So yeah, and I'm really tough to be more involved and getting to know you all in more detail. So I've seen some of you in person. I think all of you, yeah. But it's nice to be involved more and more.
Awesome. And Luke?
Hi, my name's Luke Cooper. I am involved with Friends of Witherwood Park, Friends of Wilmot Park, Friends of Valley Walk, the Hartcliffe and Witherwood Community Development Programme, Whitchurch Wombles, and I also am looking at doing green corridors with Avon Wildlife, and I've linked up with BART through BART Beacons and BART River Monitoring as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, it's always great to hear kind of who everyone is. Hopefully that helped give you an overview, Grenville, who we've got here this evening.
Brilliant.
I'm going to start sharing a PowerPoint that will go with Grenville's talk. Can everyone see that?
Great.
Yeah. Great. I'll hand over to you, Grenville. Go ahead.
Oh, thanks, Emma. Well, as I say, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining me. My name's Grenville Johnson. Forgive me if I keep glancing down, but I've got some copious notes, and I've sent them to Emma and to Sophie at Avon Wildlife Trust, just to back up my presentation as well. And thank you to Emma for presenting the PowerPoint tonight, because I think some pictures will enhance what I'm saying. I established a residence group here in Kensington Road in St George in 2004-2005, and soon afterwards I founded St George in Bloom. We've got a website, www.stgeorgeinbloom.org.uk, and both initiatives have won numerous awards, including my road being featured as a showcase garden at the RHS, the Royal Horticultural Society's launch of the RHS Greening Grey Britain campaign at Hampton Court Flower Show in 2015. Our small inner city garden has been featured on Gardener's World on BBC, and a few years ago, the famous Alan Titchmarsh chose it as one of his best British back gardens. The garden's also featured in the book Dream Gardens of England, published by Merrill. So if you can track down a copy, the gardens featured there, but it's moved on tremendously since those times. I'm extremely grateful to Avon Wildlife Trust this evening for inviting me to give this presentation. And I hope that my suggestions, together with my experiences and my skills that I've learned as a local volunteer, total volunteer, together with my ideas, will help you and your group move forward and become more established and become more successful. I feel it's really important, and irrespective of whether you're a really established group or if your group is at the early stages of development, to just try to help your group evolve and grow. And there's no magic formula to that. And hopefully what I'm saying tonight, I'm not trying to say this is the way to do it. You have to learn, and the best way to learn is to try it out. I'm very happy as well to support you and find ways of supporting you in the future. And my contact details are with Avon Wildlife Trust. So please get hold of me if you feel I can be of help and support or give you any help and advice. So let's start then. The first steps to success. Well, it's pretty obvious really, isn't it? But give your name a group. Give your group a name and think about designing and adopting a logo if you require one. Think about how many members will join your group and how they'll be recruited. That really is important. I would say, right from the word go, think about how you and your team members can adopt the highest professional standards, even though you're a group of volunteers. I think that really is important. I personally recommend that any group needs to have a very initial discussion and have an agreement and keep a record of your aims and constitution. That really is important, and those reasons will become more obvious as my talk progresses. It's also a good idea to summarize those aims and include how you'll support nature and wildlife, and look at how you will use that for community participation more widely and environmental responsibility as well. I think those three aims, looking at nature and wildlife, community participation and environmental responsibility, are St. Georgian Bloom's core aims, and I would advise they should be yours as well. Also, it's important from the onset to discuss how the group will be promoted and publicised. We all know in these days of media how important it is to get your message out there. And we've got a website, as I've mentioned, and that's won lots of acclaim. But I would say from the very, very beginning, keep your aims and ambitions simple and achievable. Move in tiny steps. Now, the first issue that I would say that is really important for your group to discuss and adhere to is the issue of safeguarding. Make sure that the needs of vulnerable children and adults who join your group are fully met. They may also need additional supervision from a carer or a parent while they work within your group or within a voluntary capacity. It's important, it really is important to include them and for your group to be demonstrating that you are as inclusive as possible. Also make sure that their medical needs are fully met, which includes dietary or medication requirements, and make the members aware of that. You know, for example, it's very easy when you're gardening to say, try this, there's a bit of mint or whatever, and try that now. They may adversely react to that. So make all your team members aware of those dietary and personal needs of your group. They may wish to share their personal needs with you, and that really is an advantage. So as I've said, try to make your group as inclusive and supportive for everyone as possible. Now, luckily, very recently, Avon Wildlife Trust have published some outstanding and very useful guidance on safeguarding issues. So have a look at their website, and I'm sure that the team will provide that information for you if you require it. The other issue I would say is correspondence and communications, and here are some helpful tips. At some point, your group will need to correspond or communicate with other organisations or individuals. Please remember that someone on your behalf of your group will need to do this. So it's helpful for you to have a forwarding address, an email address, or main phone contact number for your group. It's also useful to have your address and contact details printed on A4 size paper. We've had for St George in Bloom little cards printed with our logo on, with our contact details and our website and my phone number. This should include your logo if you've adopted one. So the next step moving forward, you've had an initial talk, you've looked at safeguarding, you've looked at how you'll promote your group, you've looked at how your group will be constituted and how your members can contribute to your group. Bear in mind that everyone has an important part to play, no matter how small that is. And everyone won't be at the same stage of development or the same skill set. That doesn't matter. Everyone has an important part to play. So as you gather more experience, you might wish to become more ambitious and move forward. You might wish to have a yearly plan, which we've done as a voluntary group, so that you can demonstrate your success, put it up on the website or find ways of promoting it, but also review any progress that you've made. Be prepared to learn from mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. Don't worry about that, but try to build on your success. Think about how you'll promote your group and publicize its aims and achievements. For example, will you use social media, websites, whatever? Identify the various skills that the members of your group have as individuals and utilize and value them fully. Some members will help in practical ways. Some members may wish to contribute in lots of various ways. So everyone has a part to play. What I would say is take photos of any projects or locations before you begin and during and after the task is finished. Use them in any publicity you utilize with the owner's permission. And the other important issue is leadership. Decide from your first meeting if you wish a member to become your lead person or chairperson, call it what you will, and also decide if you wish to keep records of your meetings and decisions. If so, you'll need a treasurer and a minute or correspondence secretary. I highly recommend that you do so, particularly if you wish to explore external funding opportunities for any of your projects. They'll want to know that you've got a properly constituted group and you've got a team to manage your group or a project leader. So moving on to becoming more established. Well, you might wish to link with other groups or national organisations. For example, we've linked via the RHS, the Royal Horticultural Society, and they've been very supportive with what we've been doing. You might wish to promote your group through website links or by participating in local events. So explore those opportunities as well. Now, the big issue of funding and money and bank accounts and building society accounts. I would say it's vital to set up a bank account or a building society account, particularly if you wish to seek any local or national funding or to pay any personal expenses. The majority of funding providers will require this to be set up before granting you any funding for your project. So that's an important issue. They'll also need to see a copy of your aims or constitution, so make sure they're written down and available. When seeking external funding for any projects, the chair or the team leader may also have to make important decisions on your behalf. So allow your group members to enable your group leader to do that. Make sure that any financial accounts for your group are also available for public scrutiny. That really is important in order for your group to be transparent as possible. So seeking funding for your projects and keeping everyone safe is the next area. Well, make sure that permissions from any landowners are granted before any work is started. Get that written down or get their permission. It might be verbal, but I would say if it's council land, it's very important to actually get that written down as well. Health and safety training may be needed for your group before working on council-owned land, and that's a vital element, or any private areas or sites. You have to think about the needs of the public as well as the members of your team. Remember, you need to keep everyone safe and also consider the safety of the public when you're working, particularly on the public site. Bristol Council and other councils offer very good training for volunteers or groups who work in their parks or open spaces. So please check before starting any projects. A bit about first aid and coping with an emergency. It's important when the group is working on the site that your members have access to a first aid kit. I always used to have one with me and bring it with me on the day when we were working as a group. So have one with you at all times. Also, it's important to have access to a mobile phone in the event of an emergency as well. A bit about your tools and specialist equipment. Make sure you have a supply to hand of proper tools and equipment for your group to use. Some local traders gave us some kit that we were able to use, and a local team of high-vis jacket suppliers actually donated a group of high-vis jackets to us to wear when we were open. So they may be a real legal requirement, so they need to be worn when the group is working. A bit about public liability insurance. Public liability insurance may be required for all your projects, so you need to check in advance before you start them. For example, a local insurance company in St. George many years ago donated free public liability insurance to us as a group as a goodwill gesture. So look at your local insurance providers and see if they'll come up with some goodwill gestures. It was limited to a determined number of participants working from our group as well, and we couldn't oversee that. That was the rules that we had to abide by. Publicising and promoting your work. Consider having an annual celebration day or an event to showcase your achievements. We used to have an open day at the local church, and we joined with other groups as well. But I've also held open days here in my street, and we've had the Lord Mayor of Bristol and other civic dignitaries coming to see our displays and to see what we've achieved. Consider having your own display stand at local community events. Make your displays look as professional and as attractive as possible. We've got some banners that we use on our open days, And when we have our annual award ceremony, we'll be having an annual award ceremony in October. We invite everyone to exhibit their front gardens or their streets or their allotment plots. And I laminate some certificates for them, and we give them 3 levels of award. So that's nice. And it's just a nice way of saying thank you for joining us. We've used free local newspapers, we've used the website, we've used social media to publish our achievements. Have contact cards for your group printed. I've mentioned that already, little hand cards, and I've still got a big supply of those so that they can be handed out to provide all your contact details. Keep your aims and ambitions as flexible as possible. You might have to move course, you might have to change your way of working, so keep as flexible as you can. Your group should collectively decide how extensive and your aims and ambitions will become in the future. That's a group decision, and I think that's important. Try to make each of your projects a learning opportunity and seek enjoyment from them. Have a bit of fun, have enjoyment, and have a celebration afterwards if you want to. We used to go to the local coffee shop and just join each other and have a nice celebration. Above all, enjoy working as a team and have fun. I think that really is important. And finally, I wish to share some personal thoughts. That's our house, that's Kensington Road there. I campaigned to get all the street trees in, and we've got some wheelie bin covers there, which we've planted up. And there's the mural, we all belong to nature there. So I wish to share some personal thoughts with you all, and they're included on our St. George in Bloom's website. I really feel that the significance of green streets and front and rear urban gardens are greatly overlooked at present. I believe passionately that our streets can be made more greener and more attractive to wildlife, and in turn they'll raise our spirits and help our health and well-being. They're just as important, our streets and front gardens, no matter how tiny they are, because they're as important as parks and green spaces. I would love to see a national campaign being initiated that's led by government to promote this idea. And I know that Avon Wildlife Trust are very keen on that idea as well. Our streets and front and rear gardens can greatly assist our health and well-being, and they become very valuable havens for local wildlife. We often overlook the importance and significance of streets with trees or front or rear gardens that warm the heart and raise our spirits. This is in addition to all the personal and social benefits that can be gained by visits to local parks and green spaces. I hope my presentation this evening will assist you and you all to become more successful and help to move forward as a group. Please contact me if you need or you require more support and advice. And thank you for listening tonight. All very best wishes to you all.
Thank you so much, Grenville. That was brilliant. Really, really appreciate you giving that talk and
Thank you.
sharing your insights and what you've learnt. Does anyone have any questions for Grenville about his experience with St. George in Bloom or setting up a group? Anything really?
I've got a question. I'll start. My first question is, how did you attract all of your volunteers to begin with? Were you already on friendly terms with neighbours and it just happened over a conversation that you thought, why don't we do this?
I took a more formal approach, Emma. Actually, I held a little public meeting. I spoke to the local church, and they enabled me to use their hall. And I put out there in the local free newspaper the fact that we were going to hold a public meeting. just to discuss how we might move forward. And it was quite that vague. And it all took off from there. Local people then joined, local residents joined. Certainly in my street, when I first set it up, before I set up St. George in Bloom, I wrote a newsletter and posted it through everyone's front door. And we held a meeting here at the house, and most people came from the street. And we actually set up our own constitution for Kensington Road Residents Association. And then the councillor came. He's sadly passed now, but he was an amazing guy. And he came along to that initial meeting. And then after we became successful and we were featured at Hampton Court Flower Show, he said, as he used to call me Sunshine, what are you going to do now, Sunshine? And I thought, oh, right, okay, good question. I thought about it, and I thought, St. George in Bloom, and it all evolved from there. And that was from 2004, 2005. So it's all been magical, really. But I would say, have some aims, ambitions, think about how you're going to engage with others, because it is hard sometimes, it really is. We found that, engaging with people is not a problem. It's recruiting, getting more people, volunteers on board. So hopefully that gives you some help and some advice as to move forward. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions? I'm just going to go back to the slide with Grenville's garden just because it's so amazing. So keep going with the questions, but I'm going to have that in the background just so that people can see what Grenville has created.
It's 2 levels. Actually, there's it's on 2 levels. There's an upper level. This slide here with the bird feeder. There's an upper level, and there's a big folly there. We had that installed about 7 years ago. You're very welcome to come and see it. Just give me a ring or email me. You've got my email address, hopefully. You're very welcome to come and see it. But there's a big folly, and that upper area is very sunny. This lower area is in shade. So we've used mainly hostas and ferns. We've got a stumpery there, which caters for wildlife. We've got bird feeders. We've had great tits and blue tits and robins nesting in the garden this year. We've got a big pond, which you can't see in the picture there. There's a water feature there. That's another doorway with a big mirror in it to reflect light. That's not part of the folly. That's in the lower area as well. There's the kitchen door, and that's the mural. And then there's a tiny narrow step. It's a typical late Victorian house, really, with a tiny garden. It's only 20 feet by 18 feet overall, so it's really tiny and minuscule. But the folly at the top is amazing. That is beautiful. That was built by Redwood Stone, and they took them 4 days. But it's like an old church ruin with a great big font, which is all planted up with wildlife-friendly plants and bee and butterfly attracting plants and so on. So, and we've done colour themes up there as well. Okay.
Yeah, it looks wonderful.
It does.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we had that mural painted on the side of the house about 4 years ago. That was done by Gage Graphics of Bristol, and he sent a drone over Kensington Road. You can see the street trees there, and he sent a drone, and then we've got an aircon unit up in the loft there, so I wanted to find a way of disguising the aircon unit. So he did the astronaut, and then I did We All Belong to Nature. So that's great fun. And there's our dog. Well, he's passed now, but we had a boxer dog, so he's there, and my red car in the street as well. But he sent a drone over the whole of Kensington Road, which is brilliant.
So clever. Yeah.
Great. But we have got a big wildlife pond. There's a tiny pond there, but we've now installed a big wildlife pond here in this part of the garden, so it's really deep, and it's got big koi carp and goldfish, and they've been breeding in there, and they've got babies at the moment, and it's all planted up, so it looks great with a big water cascade. So it's lovely because I think it's important to get sound and nature in your garden as well. The bug hotels and the nest boxes are regularly used, so it's really good to see nature being attracted. I don't know whether you found, if you live in Bristol, but I've seen over the years a real major decline in the number of wild birds coming to our gardens, and I think we can do all we can to attract them. So we've got the bird feeders and the bird tables. Even we had a little dormouse going up there the other day and feeding itself and having a good old feast on the seeds. So that was great.
You said that you've organised some sort of like sort of events and celebrations and so on.
Yeah.
With things like sort of health and safety and safeguarding, how do you bring sort of the key people up to speed so people are all aware of what their kind of responsibilities are?
Well, I used to, because they elected me as chair of the residents group and also St George and Bloom. I used to do updates. I happened for my sins to have been a primary head teacher in my former career of several schools. So that was a help. But I used to update all the team members, and we'd write down, we had a minute secretary who used to write copious notes, and that would be recorded down on paper, and kept on the computer. So we used to keep everybody up to speed with safeguarding and what their responsibilities were. If there were national initiatives that affected us, for example, I think it's important to make sure that that's shared with the team members as well, but talking and, collaborating, sharing knowledge, learning from others, talking to other groups as well is a really important factor. How did you start? How did you get established? What have been the pitfalls for you? And it's really exciting. We used to open we've opened the garden this year, but we used to open for the National Garden Scheme as well. And when it was featured on television, we had several hundred people here during the first night. It was absolutely, crazy because it was featured on television. And it's become really famous because Alan Titchmarsh, and, we hope that it might be featured on television again. We're keeping our fingers crossed. We had the television crew here a while ago looking at it. And so we hope that it will be part of a docudrama type, series on BBC, but fingers crossed. But I think it's important to utilise how you're going to promote your initiatives. I've gone for it because, I'm art trained as well. So to me, being involved in horticulture is a form of art. I think the way we actually juxtapose all the bits and bobs and the architectural elements of the garden and colour theme the garden as well. It's mainly green down the bottom half because it's in shade all the time. And I wasn't a horticulturalist until I retired. I've learnt all of this myself through first-hand experience and trying to juxtapose. The whole garden's potted as well. We've got some huge pots. Some of them are colossal, but everything is potted. So you can imagine it takes a lot of time, but it's great fun. It's great fun. Hopefully that answers your question, but I would say talk, discuss, update. That's why I feel it's important to have somebody as a leader in the group, and for them to be democratically elected, not to impose themselves,
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Are there any other questions for Grenville?
I think it follows on from Emma's question earlier, reference volunteers. What would you say are your best tips or tricks to, tricks isn't the right word, but to encourage people to become a volunteer?
Get out there and publicise what you're doing through community events. That's been the best way of promoting and getting more volunteers to join. It's hard. I think perhaps we need a slight cultural change in the way we progress that, you know. I know my generation, it's been a natural thing. Whether, you know, young people getting young people on board, we found quite difficult, very young people in their teens or early 20s. So we got out there and we asked people to join us just to participate and learn about horticulture and about greening up a space. And some people did, and that's important. I think it's quite difficult, and I know some groups struggle to get more volunteers on board. Certainly, I formed my residence group in 2004, and we're still going, and we still address issues. We've got a bank account for St George in Bloom. We've got a bank account for the residence group. And certainly the RHS and other funding providers, for example, a prime example, a local Tesco store opened up. They changed an old pub here in St George a number of years ago, and I rather cheekily went across to see the manager to ask if they have any community grants. I was told through the grapevine that Tesco's have a community grant scheme, and they put me in touch with the lead person from Tesco's head office who managed that scheme, and they gave us £5,000, you know, which was incredible, really. So, and we've spent that wisely. We had to accommodate their needs as well to show that the money was being spent properly. But I've also gone to, for example, to horticultural events, and I've also gone to garden centres and said, can you donate some plants? You know, I wrote to the local traders. When we did the park, you saw the St George Park, we did a pollinator hub at the entrance to the park there in St George quite a few years ago. And I wrote a letter with everyone's agreement from St George in Bloom, and a group of us took it to all the local traders, and within 3 days of talking to the local traders, we had £3,000 worth of either checks or funds available to create that pollinator hub. So it is possible. There is still fantastic goodwill out there within communities, and lots of big companies have these ways of cascading down some of their profits into community-led projects. So explore them, have a look at them, and see what you can do to access some of that money, because it really is important, isn't it? You know.
Yeah. Also, you mentioned your 4 aims, which you said you thought everybody should have as the 4 aims. Can you just repeat them?
Yeah, of course. Horticultural excellence. Okay. Horticultural excellence, community participation, and care for the wildlife and and nature.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are you responsible, Grenville? Do you look after that area around the lake in St George's Park?
No,
No,
we're not.
Does
No. Yeah.
That
I
looks a
wish
bit
we
different.
did, but you know, the thing is that, you know, the council owns the park, as we know,
Yeah.
and, you know, it was from the time I remember it as a child, because I've lived in St George all my life.
Yeah, I grew up near there.
And it was amazing when I was a child, because we had a fabulous bandstand there, cast iron Victorian bandstand. It was incredible.
Yeah.
People used to be able to row on the lakes as well. Children used to have pedalos and be able to row rowing boats across the lake as well. It was incredible. No, it fell into real serious disrepair a few years ago, and I think it's taken a lot of investment to bring it up to speed again. And but of course, the council were responsible for that, and there was
Right.
very little. From what I gathered, very little community involvement to reflect how people wanted to see that area change. You know, I'm not sure that. I think it's important for councils personally to be more consultative and to, you know, open the door to any community groups or volunteers who, you know, might really establish some really good aims and advice and
Yeah.
feedback back to them, you know.
So,
Yeah, it's a beautiful park, as all parks are there.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I just worry, you know, that, you know, the investment, I remember them, you know, they were very horticulturally biased from the 1950s when I was young, and all the beds, all the flower beds were, you know, very pristine, and, you know, it was a different planting regime then. We've tried to create the pollinator hub that's more haphazard and will attract bees and butterflies and other pollinating insects. But you know, it's interesting how it's moved on, but I think parks are so important because more and more people are living in flats or apartments. But also, this is why I feel streets are just as important as well, because they can become mini parks, you know, for people, particularly, you know, Kensington Road has 3 or 4 houses now, which are multi-occupancy dwellings. And that's fine, you know, but, you know, those people don't have they have tiny rear front gardens, but they have very, very minuscule rear gardens, and they don't necessarily look after them. So I think to give the impression that, you know, this is a community hub and that it raises your spirits to see a lovely green area with trees in it and so on, you know, really makes a difference, doesn't it? It helps.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Makes such a difference.
Yeah. But I think we're all, you know, we're all working in the same direction. This is the wonderful thing. And I think we, you know, we need to be going out there and trying to, you know, to proclaim what we're doing and to get more public, you know, interest, but also national interest in what we're doing, because, you know, it's so important for nature and for wildlife, for climate change, for all of those issues to, you know, make our spaces greener and more attractive to wildlife. I'm really worried that we're not seeing the numbers of urban birds. You know, we see loads of pigeons in the garden, and we've had robins and great tits and blue tits, but we're not seeing the variety of urban birds that I saw in my childhood. You know, 70 odd years ago. It's really worrying. You know, and
Going
so,
on from that, I was looking today at pesticide-free towns, pesticide-free cities. Obviously, I'm sure you don't use any pesticides, but do you know if in your local parks they still do? And, you know, have you raised any concerns about that?
In the past we did, because they used to weed spray and it was horrendous, you know. gather that they've reconsidered that scenario, Emma, but I still think it's a big worry. We don't use any pesticides whatsoever or
Yeah.
any sprays in our garden or the street. None whatsoever.
Yeah.
We've made that decision right from the word go, and I think that's important.
Yeah.
And nature
Yeah.
benefits anyway, doesn't it? Because
Oh, definitely. It starts coming back. I mean,
yeah.
we stopped using slug pellets about 3
Yeah.
or 4 years ago, and now
Yeah.
we have hedgehogs.
Yeah.
You know, and I said to my
Right.
husband, that's why we never had them before, because
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, you put them
Absolutely.
down. So
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
so it's, I mean, nature is very quick to pick up when
Oh,
you
absolutely.
know.
Well, we've even got badgers who trundle across the main A420 from the allotment site, and they take their lives in their hands, but they actually trundle across the main road late at night and play in the street. And we hear them, we've seen them.
Oh,
And we've got
wow.
urban foxes living in Kenston Road as well. And one
Yeah.
of my neighbours is feeding them every day.
Yeah.
And she's told me, and I want to film them actually, but they come at 4 a.m. in the morning for her
Oh.
to put out the food for them. And they wait outside her house
They learn.
religiously now.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah. No, it is lovely to see wildlife, you know, adapting to how we do things.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, fabulous.
Absolutely. No, it
Yeah.
is. And it's such a lovely learning opportunity, isn't it? To
Yeah.
learn from that and, you know, to nourish that and to treat it respectfully as well. you
Very
know?
much so. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Ren, you've got your hand up. Do you want to say something?
Yes. So I'm conscious of time, and it's just a note when Grenville was talking about going out and reaching people, you know, talking to other community groups. It reminded me of the community organizing framework. So Emma and I were in this taster session the other day. And it's from the community organizers webpage. You can have a look. So it's quite interesting because it's this community organizing framework does have a lot of steps, and they start with reach, which is exactly what you're saying. It's getting out, engaging with everybody and anyone, ensuring inclusivity and equality. So it's to go where people are.
Yeah.
And then while you do so, you listen and you spark a dialogue and develop those relationships and build the pictures of the people's life and interests, and encouraging that reflection and explore possibilities and challenge people about the ways they think and the ways that they could, you know, be more involved, and the little things, the little actions that they could take they might not otherwise have thought about, and then connect and make those links. And it's quite an interesting framework, and I'm not sure if everyone is aware of it, so I wanted to leave this note. So it's called Community Organizing Framework, and if you go on their website, these community organizers, I can put a link here, and I found it quite interesting, and it's obviously linked to what we are all talking about here. They do sometimes promote free taster sessions and free courses. I know there's probably one coming up which is on this first step, which is reach. So have a look. It's another resource that could support our actions, our community actions. So I just want
I was with that with Iran on that training thing, and it was a really nice framework. I think it's something that you're probably all implementing and not knowing that you do it. But personally, I found it quite helpful seeing it all split up into different stages. And one of our colleagues has this amazing phrase, which I'm not going to take credit for because she uses it, and she says bumping spaces are important. So what she means by that is anywhere where you bump into people. So it doesn't have to be a community centre. It could be the local chippy, it could be the pub, it could be the hairdresser. Wherever, those are also good places to find people in your community who might be interested in what you do. You can start a chat, have a coffee, eat some fish and chips, whatever you want to do. And I quite like that it kind of dismantles the idea that you have to always go to formal spaces. Just thinking where people are in the community, and that seems like a good place to start.
Well, a lot of what we've achieved has been informal. Although we've had specific aims and we've gone out there and reached out to the wider community, you know, I perhaps it's a unique position. I'm 74 years old. I don't mind mentioning my age, but I was born and raised in St. George. And I think that, it's been a wonderful opportunity because I know the area really well, but I know my friends, I know my neighbours, and it's been a great opportunity to socialize as well, to get to know people, to get to know them as individuals, but also to ascertain, well, everyone can contribute in lots of different ways. Lots of our members are practical. They're really practical and they're good at DIY. I'm hopeless at that, but so we rely on them, and they then said, oh well, if you need someone so putting up in your house, well, we'll help you. So it leads on, it becomes a social thing, doesn't it? And you get to know and respect people as individuals, but also as friends as well, and we're all good friends, and that's really important. Certainly our community is an amazing community. It's diverse, people from all over the world, but that's not the point. It's the fact that everyone talks to each other and spends time with each other. And we used to have an open day and barbecues in the street, and we also had open days where we had a big display of what we've achieved, and we invited the Lord Mayor. We used to invite the Lord Mayor and Lady Mayoress, or Lady Mayoress or Lord Mayor and partner to this garden and to the street every year. It hasn't happened this year, but we used to do that as well, just to push the boundaries of, well, this is what we're trying to achieve, and hopefully make them aware, because it doesn't always happen. You need to just be, as you say, that develop that awareness and those links and push, what you're trying to achieve really importantly. And success comes from that. It's been great fun as well, a huge amount of fun, but a tremendous amount of work, but that's what you need to do in order to gain success. The lovely thing, I think the ultimate, was seeing Kensington Road replicated full scale by the RHS. Because we used to have, battered old cars abandoned in the street. And it wasn't as tidy as it currently is. And, I was really concerned about that, having lived in the area. And my granny bought this house in 1900. So we wanted to have a burnt out old wrecked car, and the RHS allowed us to have that, with wheelie bins overflowing with rubbish. So we had a really, what we call a grot street, and then it led to, the houses replicated, and each front of the house had a different themed garden. So we had a water garden, an edible garden, a wildlife friendly garden, a log garden, you name it. We had bike and wheelie bin stores installed with green roofs. We had an edible garden. We had a wildlife garden. We showed how important it was, how urban trees can cool the urban environment. So we had thermal imaging cameras underneath the street trees. And when people stepped outside that space, they realized, oh gosh, yes, trees do really cool the street, And of course, we chose Rowan. We had big London plane trees installed in the late 19th century here, and many of them were taken out because they became very invasive. So I chose Rowan trees, and of course the berries, it's a feast for the wild birds during the winter and during the autumn months. It becomes a bit of a pain on wet days because they get squashed on the pavements, but there we go. Nothing that a broom can't handle. So, but we chose rowan trees, because they're wildlife friendly, and the birds nest there and they feed in them, and You know, it's so important. And we're going to be underplanting the trees with some spring wildflowers this year. So we're going to do that as a project. So that's the next step. So we've got to think about that and get together. But we've had gardening days, and we have, clean-up days. We help each other. The St. George in Bloom competition opens itself to wildlife-friendly front gardens or edible gardens. We look at all the allotment plots in St. George, and we've just judged them a few months ago. We'll have our award ceremony in October at the local church, at the local allotments plot, at their pavilion, as they call it. And I laminate all the certificates and give everyone an award. And, a group of us have judged those allotment plots and those front gardens and those streets this year. So that's been wonderful to see the variety of wildlife within the local area as well, and see what people are doing to improve their areas, which is amazing. It's a real privilege.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to say a huge thank you, Grenville.
You're very welcome.
To 7 o'clock now.
Okay.
But if anyone has any final questions, feel free to ask them, or I can always pass on questions to Grenville as well. I'll give you his contact details if you did want to contact him about anything further. Thank you all so much for coming this evening. And I'll make sure to get this recording to you. And thank you, Grenville. That was a
You're
lovely.
very welcome. Well, lovely to see you all. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.